focused for the last year on a real problem. Not that this isn't a problem, it is a problem, but on a real issue that with a little bit of attention from everyone and a lot of less rhetoric we could fix, and that is helping to amend a bill that did pass and does need to be amended, Biggert Waters. Now, I'm not threatening to shut the government down over this. I'm simply asking and raising attention to the fact that at some point we would like to have a debate on this floor in the House on amending Biggert Waters. Biggert Waters was a bill that was passed through here. It wasn't debated for 40 years. It was debated for a very short time. At the time the bill passed, can I ask for 5 additional minutes?
Without objection.
The bill passed out of the committee on the Senate side, never did come to the floor at all for debate, went to the House, was changed pretty dramatically, and then put in a conference committee, which happens sometimes, not usual, but it does happen. Not complaining about that, except that the results of it are that hundreds of thousands of people in Louisiana, Texas, Florida, North Dakota, New York, and New Jersey, tomorrow morning, as I guess the government is shutting down, and they may not be able to go to work if they have a government job, will also have a big fat bill coming on their flood insurance. Because Biggert Waters, the bill in the House, had several very pernicious provisions, one of which is that the minute a person who has, and there are 5 million policies in the country, there should be about 17 million, but there are only 5. There will be 17 million, or some such universe as that. There are 5 million now. We have many in Louisiana. When a person goes to put their house on the market and they sell it, the act of sale, according to Biggert Waters, removes their grandfather status, and they go from grandfathered status, which was below market rate, which was done purposely to try to help people that live in coastal areas, not necessarily in secondary homes, not in condos, not in million-dollar mansions. These are people that work on the rivers, fish, coastal communities, hardworking individuals and small businesses, to allow them to live where they have lived, in our case, for 300 years. They didn't just move there in the 1980s. They didn't move down there for sunbathing. They've been down there for 300 years, to give them an opportunity to live in with the reasonable insurance. In the Biggert Waters bill, that trigger, that for sales, the act of putting up a for sale sign or selling your house, eliminates your subsidy, virtually rendering your house valueless. It's not just paying 25% more, 100% more, 400% more. That's hard enough. But in some cases, it literally is going to render a house valueless. Because if a couple was paying, let's just say, for instance, $1,200 a year for insurance, the trigger mechanism, which kept that at $1,200, but let's say the real rate is $15,000, their flood insurance will go from $1,200 to $15,000 overnight. No one will buy their home for $15,000 annual premium for insurance. So if they have $400,000 in equity in their home, or $500,000 equity, or $150,000 equity, or perhaps they have $1 million in equity, it's gone, because their house will not be able to be sold for virtually any price close to what it's worth. That is not right. That would become close to takings. Now, when this bill passed, I put an objection in the record. I said then we would be back talking about it. There are ways that we can fix bills. We need to get Biggert Waters fixed and changed. I want to submit we don't shut the government down to do it. We negotiate. We meet in conference. We bring amendments to committees. We work together. And I want to just read into the record for just a few minutes, I don't see anyone else on the floor, that many in Congress were led to believe that the flood insurance program was unsustainable, that it consistently paid out more in losses than it collected in premiums. The only way to balance the ledger was to eliminate subsidies. That wasn't the case. During 3 of the past 5 years, the program actually collected more in premium revenues than it paid out in losses. In fact, the program has tabulated an annual surplus 18 times during its 42-year history. Now, there were times after the Florida terrible year, 2004, I think, when 4 hurricanes hit, and of course after Katrina, where the program took a very strong hit when our levees broke and caused so much drain from the fund. But if you look over time, it was about a $19 million average loss per year. Not great, but not horrible. Not enough to generate the kind of bill that was passed here that is draconian. I also think most members of Congress would be surprised to learn that 40% of all properties which are required to maintain flood insurance do not have an active policy. This violation of the law costs the program hundreds of millions in lost revenues. There are stricter penalties in bigger waters for lenders. However, it is difficult to justify these exorbitant rate increases for people who are participating in the program and playing by the rules when millions of property owners are bucking their legal obligation. I also think most members of Congress and the general public would be shocked to learn that only 44% of the money collected by the program is used to cover flood losses in any given year. In fact, the program spends more money paying the insurance companies and agents who administer the program but don't incur any risk, and to servicing the debt created by the Corps of Engineers than it spends on the losses for flood. Now, I'm going to submit this to the record. These are...
Without objection.
Thank you. These are only several reasons why this bill needs to be amended. Again, I'm not threatening to shut the government down. That is not appropriate to get amendments to this bill. There are ways to amend a bill, and we can work on that. I'd like to put Michael Heck's quote into the record. Michael Heck is the G&O Executive Director, G&O Inc. He's leading a great delegation or a group of people, realtors, bankers, Gulf Coast residents, and many others. He said, "It is irresponsible to introduce drastic reforms that will potentially devastate hundreds of thousands of American homes and business owners before basic questions about foregone revenues and high costs are answered. To proceed otherwise, destroying the wealth of innocent Americans who have done exactly as the government told them, maintained insurance, often never flooded, is both economically unwise and morally unjust."
Without objection.
Madam President, I know that my time is almost to the end. There's no one else on the floor, so I'd like to speak until someone else gets here. I would like to be recognized. But, Madam President, this is what we should be working on. We should be working on fixing flood insurance. Tomorrow morning, October 1, these rates go up. These trigger mechanisms go into effect. It is devastating for people in your state, in my state, in Florida, in Texas. But the Texas senators seem to be more concerned about the Affordable Care Act. I understand in their mind it's a problem. And in their heart, they're sincere. And I understand their constituents are complaining. But it is the law, and we should not shut the government down over this. I wish they would turn their attention to this, to the Bigger Waters bill, which this House and Senate passed. It needs to be amended. It needs to be